I think my most memorable experience on Monterey Bay happened a couple of years ago. Myself and colleagues at Stanford, Jeremy Goldbogen, and from Cascadia Research, John Kalambakitis, had been developing these new tags to put on whales that measured the underwater movement of the animals, but also measured video. And so it allowed us to see from the animal's perspective when they're feeding, what they're seeing, what their environment looks like. And it was a day a couple of years ago when there were a lot of animals close into shore, and we knew there were a lot there. And we went out the day before and saw a bunch of animals, and then we called John and said, okay, John, tomorrow morning, let's meet at 7:30 at the boat ramp over at Moss Landing. We're going to go out and deploy some tags. And John is a field guy who believes in you start in the morning and you end when it's dark kind of thing. And Jeremy and I hadn't really told him the situation about how many whales were around, but we get there in the morning and John he's loaded for bear. You know, he's got enough food and water for several days. He's got a backpack full of stuff, and Jeremy and I just kind of show up in our shorts and t-shirt and, you know, our life jackets. And John, I think, may have been a little skeptical as to whether or not we were equipped well enough. And we kind of pull out of the Moss Landing Harbor, and you kind of take a left to go through the jetty, and we encountered our first whale. And we were still in idle speed, and I didn't even have my tag pole ready or anything, so we passed that one up. And by the time we got to the end of the jetty, there were two more whales. And at this point, I was ready, and so I said, "Oh, John, why don't we just go ahead and do this?" And so we put a tag on right then, and then we moved about 60 feet, and there were two more whales. We put another tag on, and this repeated for the next, I'd say, about 8 or 10 minutes. And we put out all 4 of our tags in about 20 minutes. John never got the boat out of idle speed, and we turned around and went back in. And it was about 8 o'clock in the morning, and I could see John's brain just kind of short-circuiting of like, wait a minute, we're supposed to be out on the water all day. Like, what just happened? And we went and got a burrito, a nice breakfast burrito, and then we sat on the beach. And the whales were literally right off the beach in front of Mbari. And we watched them go back and forth. We could see the tags on all the whales. Eventually one of the tags fell off, and we could see it in the water. And we waited about half an hour, and it basically washed up right on shore in front of us. And it was one of the easiest days of science I've ever had. And what was great about it was there were a lot of people around. There were a lot of whale watching boats, there were a lot of tourists, there were people on the beach, and we could talk about what those tags were doing to the people that were seeing those animals right there. And then when we got the tags back, the video was unbelievable. It was one of the first times we had seen, from the whale's perspective, what it looks like to feed in Monterey Bay. And it was one of these events where there were birds diving, there were sea lions all over the place, there were humpback whales everywhere. And from the whale's perspective, you can actually see that. The tag had a camera both on the front and on the back, and we could see as the whale would come up from underneath a prey patch, you could see a school of anchovies, and you could see them sort of move around as the whale got close to it. And as soon as the whale lunged, you could see diving birds and shearwaters just hitting the water and grabbing fish right in front of the whale. And then behind it, there's a whole kind of a rat pack of sea lions back behind the whale, picking off the fish that kind of came out of the mouth and that may have been stunned by the whale. And it was just this vision of how much life is going on under the surface and what we can't see. But from the whale's perspective, it's just happening all over. I mean, it was like controlled chaos. And to see all these animals interacting and feeding on the same thing in the same place, it really just, it kind of set the spark in our minds of, okay, there's a lot more going on here than we can tell just by being at the surface. So from a very simple morning, we got a pretty detailed and awesome, unique view of what this bay is like and the richness of life that it promotes.